Okay, I'm Scott Shekel, the president of the Farm Bureau, and I'm going to be your moderator. If you have any questions, there's a box in the back. Todd Bowman and Sandra Gerlach are doing the screenings for us. Larry Jepson is running the time. Anytime you have any questions, go back and fill one out and give them to them. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the local county candidates. And then when we get done with them, we're going to go into the state candidates. First of all, we got, for the county supervisor, we got Mike Steinis and Sandy Knuckles-Strube. Did I pronounce that right? And for county auditor, we have Alyssa Smith. For the sheriff's race, we have Brent Gilbert and Steve Schrader. So we can start with Mike. You have 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay. We gotta turn it on?
I'm on? I'm on. All right. Thank you, Scott. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would first like to thank the Farm Bureau and for the opportunity to participate and express our views in this Meet the Candidate Forum. I would also like to thank Mr. Mark Beacom back here. He is doing our videoing this evening so that we can broadcast it on our local access channels, including Bellevue and Maquoketa. So we thank him for doing that and for Farm Bureau doing that for us. I'm going to start out and give you a brief introduction. I think most of you know me. My name is Mike Steinis. I'm the son of Atlas and Elgene, the late Atlas and Elgene Steinis. I had 6 siblings. I grew up on a farm between Lamont and Andrew. I graduated from Maquoketa High School. Been born and raised here in Jackson County my whole life. Conned my wife into marrying me. My wife Jane is out here. And we've been married for 41 years, so it was work in progress, still work in progress. So, we have 4 children, 6 grandchildren. I'm a lifelong resident of Jackson County, work and or co-owned Anamosa Silos just north of town here for 40 years. So I do have a direct relationship to the ag community and the small businesses. I did own and operate Steinis Auction Service for a period, which I'm still active, mostly volunteer. I have my licensed real estate agent, and I served on various boards and committees, and am a member of St. Joe's Catholic Church in Bellevue. This will be my 2nd term. As always, my objective is still the same, to make informed, logical decisions based on research, consulting, and use my own personal values, which will greatly affect our livelihood and maximize our resources here in Jackson County. We need, I mentioned this before and I've mentioned it in my ads, we need our younger generation to get involved with the whole election process and speak up. I mean, they are our future. Very proud to say, if you look in the paper, read the paper last couple of weeks, I think we had the #1 judging team, is that correct? Right here from Jackson County. A couple local boys, Cottonville, Andrew. So he's giving me 15 seconds. I will provide proactive, open-minded leadership based on honesty with full accountability and transparency. I will cut it a little short. I will welcome any advice and comments or questions from anyone. I commend and respect my opponent for stepping forward and being willing to serve. And that way it gives everybody a chance to talk about you. So I thank you for your giving me the opportunity to be of service. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy.
Good evening, everybody. I am Sandy Knuckles-Strube, and I am running for your county supervisor. Unfortunately, I had an accident yesterday and fractured both elbows, so bear with me, I'm in a little bit of pain here. But I grew up south of Dubuque. My parents owned Crystal Lake Cave, where they raised 9 of us kids and put a good work ethic in all of us. I spent a lot of time in Jackson County, playing softball in Bellevue, Lamont, St. Donatus. In my early 20s, I bought a business and moved to Dubuque. In my years that I spent in Dubuque, I actually ran 3 businesses and did it successfully. We sold the business 20 years ago and made the move to Leisure Lake, where we raised our youngest of 5 kids, entertained our 12 grandkids, and just enjoyed the country living. I became active in our community, spent 10 years on the Leisure Lake Board of Supervisors and the Budget Committee, and I became familiar with a lot of Jackson County ordinances. I also started and worked with a youth group there, started the farmers market, and I had a fundraiser for Bernard Rescue Squad. Last year I hosted a Thanksgiving dinner for our community at St. Lawrence Parish in Otter Creek, and just for anyone who needed or wanted a hot meal, they were welcome. All proceeds or all donations that we raised went to St. Stephen's Food Bank. And I'm really not here to be judgmental of what my opponent has done or has not done. I am here because I think we can do better, and I think we can do more. I have a few ideas to promote more tourism in the county and bringing in more revenue while helping our small businesses. I intend to re-examine the Prairie Creek project that was turned down and voted against in the past. I think this could be self-sustaining, create more jobs, and also bring in more revenue. Being concerned about our environment, I will be evaluating the convenience of recycling in our for our businesses and in our rural areas. I will work with the other county supervisors to make sure our roads are maintained and well taken care of. Allocating funds as needed for rural roads also. Let's see. I will make sure all ordinances are followed and enforced to keep Jackson County beautiful and inviting. I will make sure regulations on permits are followed and sent out in a timely manner. I will take a seat on more committees than my opponent has in the past, ensuring issues and concerns are heard and addressed. Last but not least, I would like to move forward on concerning the Jackson County Jailhouse, researching a way to make this happen while keeping our taxes at a minimum. I believe I have the qualifications to become your county supervisor, and I also believe that together we can make positive changes for us and for our future kids. Thank you so much for your support, and stay safe and God bless.
Okay, Brent.
Am I on, Rich? Okay. Good evening and welcome. First, I'd like to give thanks to the Farm Bureau for organizing this event, the Ohnward Fine Arts Center for hosting us, and the audience and my opponent for attending. I was also born and raised here in Jackson County. I graduated from Bellevue High School and currently run the family farm here. I went on to St. Ambrose University and graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice, a minor in psychology, and graduated on several national honor societies. I have over 27 years experience in law enforcement. I I've worked everything from small towns to big towns like Davenport, a state agency, and I'm currently a Scott County Sheriff's Officer. I work at the Scott County Sheriff's Office. I was frequently selected for multiple specialty positions for my interpersonal and relationship building skills. Some of those include community-oriented policing officer, school resource liaison officer, school violence prevention specialist, undercover narcotics officer, SWAT team leader, field training officer, detective, evidence technician, defensive tactics instructor, DARE instructor, and incident commander. I've also had other additional training that's too numerous to mention in this forum. I also have 32 years military experience, and I just recently retired as a captain. I've led thousands of troops over the years as a master sergeant and later as an officer. I was selected for high-profile leadership positions on both my deployments and praised for my success. In Iraq, I was the International Zone Liaison Officer embedded with the United States State Department. And in Afghanistan, I was the battle captain that oversaw all of Regional Command North as a lieutenant and was also the public affairs officer. My diplomatic skills, ability to build trust, collaboration, and teamwork were instrumental in my success. I'm asking you for the chance to show our community a more effective sheriff's office. My goals are to provide professional leadership through honesty, integrity, accountability, and transparency. I want to restore trust, confidence, and respect in the sheriff's office through competence, increase proactive patrolling against serious crimes like drugs and thefts throughout the county, protect the community by networking with them to help deter crime, protect taxpayers by implementing the safest, most cost-effective, and efficient jail solution, and network with other law enforcement agencies to multiply the results of our efforts. At the end of the day, I want to do a better job for everyone. I want to gain the respect of our community, gain the respect of the sheriff's team, and gain the respect of neighboring law enforcement agencies. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
We live, Rich? Good evening. My name is Steve Schrader, the current Chief Deputy and Democratic candidate for Jackson County Sheriff. First of all, I want to thank Farm Bureau, Ohnward Fine Arts Center for hosting the forum, and I'd like to thank everyone in attendance for coming, and my opponent, Brent Kilburn. This has been a different year with COVID-19 and the difficulties running a standard campaign, not being able to get out to talk to the citizens regarding any concerns, and most of all, fundraising, because these are expensive. Even with these difficulties, citizens reached out to me and asked how they could help and contribute to our campaign, and I want to thank them for that. Now a little bit about myself. I'm married to my wife, Carol, for 29 years. I have 3 children and 1 grandchild. My wife, Carol, is a registered nurse. My oldest son, Zach, just took the bar in Arizona and will be practicing law. My middle son, Logan, is in his first year of medical school, and my daughter, Marissa, is currently a senior at Loras College in Dubuque with the hopes of becoming an oncology physical therapist. I have a total of 34 years in law enforcement, and I'm a veteran of the United States Army Military Police Corps, having served my country for 3 years in Europe. I'm actively involved in my community. I'm a member of the St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Bellevue, where I served as a Eucharistic minister, lector, usher, Mass server, and I have directed both a Christian Experience Weekend and a Teens Encounter Christ. I've been involved in local schools throughout the county since I started at the Sheriff's Office, speaking to student bodies on a variety of topics and offering fingerprint classes to the forensics class as part of their curriculum. I also volunteered to be a mentor for students at one of our local schools for a year and spending time and talents with that student. I'm a member of the Bellevue Knights of Columbus, the Bellevue American Legion, the Maquoketa Fraternal Order of Eagles, and past board member and president of the Bellevue Golf Club. I bring leadership, experience, and loyalty to the table. Except for my 3 years in the military, I have lived in Jackson County, paid taxes to Jackson County, raised my family in Jackson County, and supported Jackson County. I've spent 60% of my life serving and protecting the citizens of Jackson County and would appreciate the opportunity to serve you as your next Jackson County Sheriff. Thank you.
Okay, Alyssa.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you to the Farm Bureau for hosting this forum. I am Elisa Smith, and I am your Jackson County Auditor. I answer to many names: Lisa, wife to Ken, daughter of Lowell and Arlene Till, sister to Larry, Lori, Andrea, and Amy, mom to Christine, and grandmother to Gwendolyn. I'm a graduate of Lost Nation High School and a lifelong Jackson Countyan. Everybody has a story, and mine begins in the fall of 1980 when Assessor Harold Levin decided to take a chance on a young worker looking for employment. In May of 1981, Treasurer Al Tebby hired me to work in his office, where I spent 2 years in the auto license department and 2 years in the tax department. Mike Cotton asked me to work for him in the auditor's office in February 1985 with my primary duty to do real estate transactions. Mike never did mention about me working with elections, but here I am, 35 years later, and 150 elections that I have been involved with. Where has the time gone? I have had the pleasure of working with many attorneys, land surveyors, and abstractors over the years. Somebody recently asked me how many legal descriptions I've read, and I would estimate at least 50,000 or more. The auditor's office is a very diverse office with something always going on. We're responsible for payroll and benefits to all county employees, process the claims for goods and services purchased, administer elections and voter registrations, clerk to the Board of Supervisors, assist with the county budget, and the filing officer for cities, schools, and township budgets, process all the real estate transfers, the tax process, and information technology, along with all the cybersecurity for the courthouse computer system. Obviously, I can't do this alone. We are a team in the office, as I am blessed with dedicated and hardworking employees who need to be recognized for their years of service. Myself, along with Shelley Hoy, Becky Chapin, Bjorn Beck, Mary Stickley, and Danielle Bickford have a combined total of 123 years of service to Jackson County. I am always thankful and grateful for all they do in the best interest to the citizens of Jackson County. Every election is important. Myself and Mary Stickley are both seat certified, which means we are state election administrators. This ensures that all elections are administered the same way year after year. There are many rules and regulations during the election process. Even after Election Day, the canvass needs to be completed, the post-election audit needs to be performed, and finally the paperwork needs to be sent to Des Moines to complete this election cycle. I welcome your questions tonight, but you can call me anytime with questions and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, the first question is for the supervisor candidates. Prairie Creek, should the county support its development, and would you support to increase tourism in Jackson County? Mike?
All right, Scotty, sure, I can answer that to the best of my ability. Do I support Prairie Creek? Absolutely, I love the idea. To be honest with you, I think it would put Jackson County, Maquoketa on the map. And to also be honest with you, we've considered it several times. It's like any other business. You need the money down, you need to have collateral, and you need to have a marketing plan and a plan for it. Which there was a plan devised, but it's all speculation. If the revenue comes in as projected, yes, it very well could work. I'm not at the point yet that I'm ready to put the Jackson County taxpayer as a co-signer on the loan. I'm not ready for that. I love the idea. I love the spot. I think it's a great idea. Second part of your question was what, Scotty?
Would you support increased tourism in Jackson County?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was going to use some of that in my closing statement and address my opponents here. As a matter of fact, I do, and we're very active in the tourism. I actually go to their meetings. We hired a new tourism director here about a year and a half ago. Mr. Tom Devine, and he's doing a great job. We have ongoing conversations about our welcome center, and I'm gonna put this out there. Can somebody tell me what the economic impact might be tourism in Jackson County? Somebody want to guess? Raise your hand. Nobody wants to guess? Want to make a wager? The economic impact last year for Jackson County was $34.5 million. That's up from the prior year, $500,000, but that's a pretty good run for us. So we are working very hard at tourism in Jackson County. We have a lot to offer. It's a very beautiful community. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy, you need me to repeat that?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, Prairie Creek, should the county support its development, and would you support to increase tourism in Jackson County?
Yes, as I did say, I am checking in, and I would like to re-examine the Prairie Creek project. I know it has been turned down previously. I feel that it could be self-sustaining, and I am not sure the funds that they're asking for, but that's where I'm coming in at saying that I would like to re-examine it. I do believe it would be great for Jackson County to open that or get it expanded and add to it, add to what we already have there. That's it.
All right, question for the sheriff's candidates. What is the biggest challenge in formulating a fiscally responsible budget for the sheriff's office? Brent, you go first.
Well, okay. Not knowing the budget, not being on the inside and knowing the budget and knowing what the level of training and stuff that's going on, I think the biggest challenge is going to know, how much you can put towards your training budget and things like that. You have to cover all the bases, but in today's day and age, you have to stay current on your policies, stay current within the legal parameters. You have to know what you can, assess towards your budget for training and what you're going to need to push towards your jail and everything, everything else you need to do with the sheriff's office. So I think just figuring that out, and I would suspect there's probably that could be more done in the training area and maybe has to be in the future, maybe in light of some recent events. So you may have to adjust your budget and push a little bit of the money towards some of that down the road.
Okay, Steve, you need me to repeat that?
If you would, please.
What is the biggest challenge in formulating a fiscally responsible budget for the sheriff's office?
Without a doubt, the jail. The jail is such an unknown. You can budget money for a jail, and in a facility the size that we have, there were times where we were spending $30,000 a month housing out-of-county inmates because our jail, doesn't hold the adequate number of people that we need. So we were sending 15, 16 people out a day at the cost of $60 a day just for housing. That doesn't include costs of transportation, salaries, fuels, and all that goes into that. So I would say the biggest challenge is the jail because it's such a crapshoot. Some months you might spend, $2,000 out of county. Some months you may not spend any. But there are months where we have spent $30,000 per month just on housing inmates out of county. So I would say the jail would be the biggest challenge.
Okay, Alyssa, explain the difference between absentee voting and mail-in voting by sending ballots to everyone. Which is more secure, and what would you recommend?
Prior to this election cycle, earlier this year, there was a survey that was put out by the Iowa State of County Auditors, the ISACA group. And they asked if I would support mail voting to all residents in Jackson County. I voted no. I do not believe that that's what the citizens of Jackson County need. The difference between that is that an absentee ballot is that you have to request it. You as the voter, you have to request that instead of just me sending out almost 14,700 and some ballots. There's a cost to that, and so I do not support having a system where we would mail a ballot to everybody.
Okay, back to the supervisors. Sandy, you'll go first. After years of supervisors ignoring the current jail, how would you move forward in getting a new one built?
I would probably need to see the budget and what we are looking at for funds and what it costs to build a new jail. as of right now, I don't have that information in front of me. That's something that I am researching.
Okay, Mike?
Okay, well, as most of you know, if you read the paper or listened to the radio, we have been researching this for 2 years plus. Needless to say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's pretty obvious we kicked the can down the road a few times. So, I mean, it needs to be addressed, that's no doubt. We've been through several plans, several places, several options. We have an option on the table now that we intend to put to a vote in March. So, and if you want parameters on the facility, I could sure do that, but I won't elaborate on that unless somebody wants. But we are planning. We have work in progress with our construction manager. Everybody knows we have Mr. John Hansen from Midwest Construction hired, and he is working with ECIA. Putting a flyer together right now for every household in Jackson County to get some information to them.
A question for the sheriff's candidates. Steve, you'll answer first. What is your best plan for moving forward with the jail project?
Well, we as a jail advisory committee spent 3 years gathering data, providing that to the committee, to the Board of Supervisors. Our architect, John Hansen, provided similar data that was comparable to what we came up with. Now, as far as getting it moved forward, you know, the Jail Advisory Committee is a defunct committee right now. The project has been turned over to the Board of Supervisors. You know, we were just an advisory committee. We made no decisions. We brought information to the board. They run the budget, they make the decisions, and since our Jail Advisory Committee no longer meets, the board has been taking this by the reins and moving forward with it. So I think the way it looks, we're looking at a 30-bed jail expandable to 42 for the cost of about $6.2 million. The flyers are going out, so it's just educating the public, and it's an issue that Jackson County is going to have to deal with. And the voters are going to have to decide whether or not they want to move forward with the jail project.
Okay, Brent?
Well, I think one of the first issues, and I attended many of the jail meetings, one of the first issues I think identified by the group was we could never get a real solid figure on the operating cost of what it costs to run that jail every day. So if you can provide your background of what you're doing now, just like past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior, if you can identify what it's costing you now and compare that to what you're trying to build and go forward with, that's a good step in the right direction, I think. But first you have to identify what you're spending now. Excuse me. Overall, I think we're going to need to find a happy medium. I think, you know, other sheriffs that are friends of mine have warned me, do not sell your jail to your community with the idea that it will make money for you. One, that only works if there's demand to fill your jail. To fill those vacancies. And two, jails are not a money-making, they're not a profitable business. At best, you cut down on some of your operating costs. And you know, third, you have to realize that jail standards will continue to evolve with time. So eventually down the road, we should expect to be out of compliance again, somewhere down the road. So, and you have to understand today, most jails are operating at minimal capacity due to COVID-19. And the future of detentions is unclear based on other technological advances and alternatives that we may identify going forward in the future to cut down on some of that overcrowding. So I'd like to work with John Hansen, see what we can figure out and streamline that jail and make it as cost effective and efficient as possible.
Okay, Alyssa, do you have complete confidence in our county's ability to accurately and safely calculate all votes in November and to make sure all votes are accounted for?
I am 100% certain of that. That has been my job. I've been involved in over 150 elections, and there are rules and we have protocols that are put in place to make sure. The main thing that needs to happen is you need to return the ballot back to us properly. It needs to make sure that you have signed this envelope. It is so important. I brought an envelope here tonight. Anybody that has requested an absentee ballot by mail, when you return it, the main thing that you have to do is it needs to be, get back to the auditor's office, and it needs to have a signature on this envelope. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that every envelope that gets sent out, it has an intelligent barcode on it. And what happens is this ballot, this envelope that will eventually have a ballot in it, it does not right now, but it is tracked through the U.S. postal system. This is a relatively new law, and we have exercised, we took a look at it in the June primary, but that is the main thing that you need to do. I am 100% confident that we will have our returns on time on election night.
Question for the supervisors. Mike, you'll go first. What changes would you make to help fix the gravel roads in Jackson County?
Well, if I could control the weather, Scott, would be a big part of it. But it's inevitable. I'm not quite that powerful yet. So, I mean, 2 years ago, we had a devastating spring, as you actually know, because I know there was a few incidents on your road. But it was also a year where I was in Des Moines in July, and they had frost boils coming up yet. So we were not the only ones that had that situation. We hope that don't happen again. So there was frost down 5 feet. Understand when that comes up that much, it has to go back down at some point. Now we are reconstructing some of our roads. Again, we do the best with what we have. We have many needs. Again, in Jackson County, our topography is beautiful. Our landscape, our scenic is very beautiful. Rivers and creeks and streams. Along with that comes culverts, bridges, and many bridges. So there's a very high expense to that. So we're working very hard at it, and we're doing the best we can. We do have new look on things with a couple different engineers looking at it, so we're moving forward.
Okay, Sandy, need me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
What changes would you make to help fix the gravel roads in Jackson County?
Well, for one thing that Mike was talking about, when the frost comes out, they get very bad. I've seen a lot of gravel roads. We have ruts that are 1 foot to 2 foot deep. I'm not sure why we can't grade them and put large rock in there so it's not all mud and ruts, and then put the smaller rock over it. And also our potholes are really bad. They need to be cut out. You can't just grade over them and put gravel over them and hope they're going to disappear, because they don't. They need to be cut out and then gravelled. That is the main thing that I've seen on our gravel roads.
Okay, a question for the sheriff's candidates. Brent, you'll go first. Was the ankle bracelet program ever suspended, and if so, why? And do you support the ankle bracelet program?
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say the ankle bracelet, the program ever expanded?
Was it ever suspended?
Suspended.
If so, why? And do you support it?
Well, I guess again, I don't currently work on the inside, so I don't know the inner workings of that ankle bracelet program. I don't know if it was, I believe I heard it was implemented. I don't know that it was ever suspended. But I can tell you that I do believe in the program. It may take a little more operational manpower to run it, to do your verifications and check on it. But I do believe in it. I think anything we can do to keep people out of jails, as long as it's not very serious crimes, is a good idea. And I think it keeps people out in the community, hopefully working, hopefully paying taxes, hopefully being a productive member of society. So on those lesser crimes, yes, I absolutely support it. I think that's a good program. I think there's probably some other good programs that we could explore. But I think anytime that you can keep those less serious offenders out of your jail, that's better for them, better for the county, better for the taxpayers. You're not feeding them to sit around and just be housed in jail. they can remain a productive member of society, and that's good for them even psychologically. So,
Okay, Steve, was the ankle bracelet program ever suspended? If so, why? Do you support the program?
Well, I actually implemented the electronic monitoring program here in Jackson County about 3 years ago. It's in-house arrest, it's GPS activated, you wear it around your ankle, tamper resistant. And it reduces stress in an overpopulated jail, saves thousands of dollars in expenditures, and generates revenue for Jackson County. I've had probably well over 200 people on this program, which saved thousands of dollars for Jackson County, tens of thousands of dollars with transportation costs. Obviously, you know, we can't house females, so I try to get as many females on the program as possible so we can't and we don't have to ship them out of county. Now, has it ever been suspended? It was shut down for a few months due to the fact we had cell tower issues with programming and signals. And obviously, due to COVID-19, we did shut down the program until things settle down and things subside. And then we will reinstate the program and continue to utilize this program to reduce the stress, save the taxpayers money, and generate revenue.
Okay, this question is for the supervisors and the auditor. Sandy, you'll go first. The courthouse is 60+ years old. With the jail vote not passing the first 2 times, it seems that voters would like the jail and the courthouse near each other. Do you think we should look at building a courthouse and a jail together instead of trying to do a jail, and then 10 to 20 years down the road building a courthouse?
I think we're having a hard enough time getting the jail to go through, so I think we better concentrate on that first and then down the road take care of the courthouse.
Okay, Mike?
Sure. Yeah, Scotty, I'm on the same projection as that. Our courthouse may be 60 years old, but it's in very good condition. They work very hard to keep and maintain and keep that jail or courthouse in good condition. I believe if push comes to shove, we might have enough room or expand the property where we're at for the proposed jail that at some point that could come to fruition. I don't know. But again, we've looked at the possibilities of placing a new facility, jail facility on that premises. We've turned it every which way. We've tried to buy the parking lot across to the east of us. We tried to buy the apartment buildings to the south of us. We tried to buy the houses to the west of the Penrose building. We tried a lot of different options, we really did. And feasibility and money-wise, it just was not feasible for us. So I think we worked very, very hard at it, but at this time, no, we do not need a new courthouse. Lisa, I might let you add to that.
I guess I'll put my 2 cents in on that. How's that, Mike? I would agree also with Sandy. You know what? We tried to pass a bond referendum. It didn't pass for the jail. I agree with Mike. Where we do have the potential with the new site that we could, if we need to put a courthouse at the same site where the proposed jail is at. But I think we also have made quite an investment into the courthouse also. You know, we have new windows, we have a relatively new roof, you know, we've got a relatively new furnace, our boiler system. So I don't think at this time that's probably a good idea. The thing that I think we're gonna probably have to look at is the electrical system or the computerize all of the cables that are in the floors and the walls and such. That will be an issue that eventually we will have to be dealing with. I don't know, that within 20 years, oh, absolutely.
Scotty, I just want to throw something in there. Am I still on?
Yep.
I just want to throw something in there just as kudos to our courthouse people. We have a relatively very new air conditioner, and to commend them, they were out of air conditioning for 5 weeks straight when it was 90 degrees in there. So their thermometers were reading 98 in there, and they were working very diligently in there.
Okay, for the sheriff's candidates, Steve, you'll go first. How would the sheriff's office be different under new leadership?
Well, the one thing, Am I up? Okay. The one thing that we need to continue doing is training and education. You know, we're a proactive department. We've got a lot of individuals that are young and aggressive and not afraid to get their hands dirty. So I want to do some more proactive patrolling. I want to educate our youths. I've been involved in the schools for my entire career at the Sheriff's Office, all 31 years. I've spoken to every student body in the county. I've given the forensics classes. So I want to get the youth involved and make sure that they can, we instill their trust in us, okay? Keeping up with modern day technology, things are ever changing. We just recently got new in-car computers for our units. We have a mock system that allows the deputies to do a lot of their work in their cars. We can do reports, accident reports. Keeps them out on the road longer, keeps them out of the office. And so we're doing what we can progressively to move forward and keep the citizens of Jackson County as safe as possible at the lowest possible cost. And I think we're doing a fairly good job of that.
Okay, Brent, how would the sheriff's office be different under new leadership?
Well, one of the first things that I'd like to address is, you know, the deputies do a good job. They're out there a lot of times by themselves, especially I know the night shift deputies. A lot of times are on duty alone at night. One thing I'd like to do is make sure that night shift deputy has a backup for him or her. So I don't know quite how we'd fix the schedule, how we'd work that, but I think it's asking a lot of a law enforcement officer in today's day and age to be out there by themselves and trying to get into proactive law enforcement and trying to catch drugs and burglars and things like that when they don't have a backup. That's pretty risky. So I'd like to somehow formulate that schedule so the guys would have a little more assistance and backup. Another thing I'd like to implement is if we could get a power shift, evening into night shift supervisor position in there, somebody with good experience and knowledge that can help guide those younger guys that might be on night shift and even, again, assist with that backup process because something might turn into a search warrant or something like that. You know, essentially at the end of the day, we need to get back to community service and law enforcement. We need to respond to the scene of these incidents, write the reports, collect evidence, and investigate, and be proactive against serious crimes and deter them in the future. I think evidence collection is a huge thing today. That's where your prosecutions are going to come from, even more so than statements and admissions. So I think that's where we need to go with it.
Okay, for the supervisors, Mike, you'll go first. What is currently being done for COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, Scott, it's really has been business not as normal, but we've taken many extra precautions. Of course, we're following the rules of the Iowa Department of Public Health and also the CDC and complying with all information they can inform to us. We have protection devices and masks and sanitizer in place throughout our courthouse. We opened it by appointment only on some offices. We have protective screens and partitions up in many, many places. We try to keep a 6-foot distance between them. Again, we're doing what we can and try to also service the public. You know, so we're abiding by our Department of Public Health guidelines the best we can. This thing is very unknown to us, so it's new to us, and we're working through it the best we can.
Okay, Sandy, anything to add?
Well, not being in office, this is a pretty tough question for me, but I was hoping that they were doing what Mike has mentioned, spraying down every evening of all public facilities and using masks everywhere, and plexiglass dividers between the customers and the workers. It sounds like they've got it covered.
I'd like to answer that question a little bit when it concerns to voting. You know, in June, the courthouse was shut down. I would like to assure everyone that for this election, this general election, the courthouse will not be shut down. We will open at 8:30 and we close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That allows the employees that half an hour to clean everything down, the handles, the doors, there's chairs, there's tables. So we are not shutting down, just so everybody is aware of that. The courthouse is a voting precinct and it will stay open. The other thing that I would like you to know is that when it comes to voting at the courthouse, we're going to have to try and limit distance a little bit with the 6 feet of social distancing. So we do have some challenges. Please work with us a little bit. It will be a challenge for a couple of days, specifically October 5th, we know. But we're working with it, we're aware of it, and we will be making some other changes as we go along and depending on how many people that we have. But as far as the precincts, they will be having masks and gloves and sanitizer and Clorox wipes. And we try and equip our election officials with everything that they possibly need for Election Day to conduct that election and to have a very safe election. Thank you.
For the sheriff's candidates, Brent, you'll go first. There's a clear connection to drug and alcohol abuse causing loss of life, health, and property crimes. What career experience do you have that would help reduce these types of crimes in Jackson County?
Well, to start at the lowest level, I mentioned earlier I was a DARE instructor, so that is the education piece, being in the schools and working with those young children and hopefully getting them down the right path to begin with in their lives. I was an undercover narcotics officer. That means I wasn't an investigator. I was an investigator, but that means I was out actually working as a buying agent, buying drugs as an undercover narcotics officer. So I have experience in that. I'm also trained and was a community policing officer, which means you go out into the communities and embed yourself with them, and you learn their problems, you learn the community, you learn the people, and you start to network with them and start to come up with solutions and let them become part of those solutions and empower them to help guide you to those solutions that they want to see. And I was also a NETS officer in Davenport, and that stands for Neighborhoods Energized Through Success. We did the same thing there. It's a community policing program where we basically got assigned, I don't want to say bad, but high crime areas in the city. We embedded ourselves into those neighborhoods, attended all their neighborhood watch meetings, just proactively worked with all the residents in the neighborhoods, and basically did everything we could to help them come up with solutions. They helped us come up with solutions. We collaborated together and cleaned those neighborhoods up considerably. It was a very successful program.
Okay, Steve, there's a clear connection to drug and alcohol abuse causing loss of life, health, and property crimes. What career experience do you have that would help reduce these types of crimes in Jackson County?
Well, like I said earlier, you get involved with the kids at a young age, you build a rapport with them, you get that connection so you can talk to them and they're not afraid to talk to you. I actually implemented and I started the Bear Creek Narcotics Task Force quite a few years ago. We were operational for 9 years, funded by the Byrne Grant until the Byrne Grant expired and we ran out of funds. It's very expensive to run a task force, you know, $200,000 plus. I worked as an investigator in the task force for 9 years. I testified in the Northern District of Iowa, Southern District of Iowa, and I'm responsible for the 2 largest drug busts in Jackson County. So we're doing what we can with what we got, but it comes down to education, proactivity, and you know, like Brent said, he's been around the block a few times. You find your high crime areas and you focus on them. If you've got an area that's getting a lot of vandalism and a lot of thefts and what have you, you know, you read your reports every morning and you communicate with your staff and you say, okay, we have issues in this area right here, so let's focus there. Let's focus our attention up there and get to meet some people up there so we know what's going on. So kids, task force, which is dissolved, but we still collaborate with Clinton County, Jones County, Dubuque County, Cedar County, and all the local entities in Jackson County, you know, your police departments, and we work very well with them. We've done a lot of search warrants with them, and we've made a lot of arrests with them collectively.
Well, Okay, we'll do one more question here. It's for the sheriffs, and Steve, you'll go first. When looking at the responsible spending and use of taxpayer funds, do either of you have a program that tracks and monitors employee productivity while at work to ensure the tax-paying citizens of Jackson County are receiving a fair value for their salaries paid?
Am I first, Scott?
Yep.
Absolutely. We have a program at the office. It's our computer program. It documents who makes the arrests, calls for service. It documents citations, whether drugs, traffic, non-traffic, burglaries, thefts. So we can do a manual search inside the office and disseminate to administrative staff as to who's being productive, who's not being productive or counterproductive, and we can monitor that. And as we move forward, we can look at, okay, so this individual's really high volume, okay, really proactive and out there, and this one here is just a little lower. Well, we might have to have a talk, okay, and communicate, which I think is the number one thing you can do is communicate. I'm a communicator. I speak a lot to the staff and to the night guys, whether it be through texts, phone calls, or what have you, but yeah, we have ways that we can track that and monitor that, yes.
Okay, Brent, when looking at the responsible spending and use of taxpayer funds, do you have a program that tracks and monitors employee productivity while at work to ensure the tax-paying citizens of Jackson County are receiving a fair value for their salaries paid?
Yes, at the Scott County Sheriff's Department, we also have a computer system that tracks all that activity. We receive our stats quarterly. They get posted in the briefing room. Right now, we're up to 41,000 calls for the year. We have 200,000 residents in Scott County. Davenport's probably about 100,000. They're up to almost 80,000 calls for the year, separate from our calls even. So yes, we track all those stats. Arrests get tracked. Drug arrests, it even breaks it down to what kind of arrest it was. We do annual reviews at my department, and you have to keep in mind, we have supervisors out on the street with us, so it takes a little less looking back into it, but they also review our videotapes to see kind of what our activity is, how we're handling calls, if there's any issues with you, with your interpersonal tact with the community, anything that could be of a training value to help that officer become better, or say, hey, don't be doing that, whatever it is. So our supervisors have a little more direct interaction with our officers because they're right out there on the street with us, and that would be another added value to having that night shift, power shift, afternoon shift supervisor at the sheriff's office. They would have that more interpersonal interaction with the officers and know what's going on. But yeah, basically the reviews that we do every year, they review our videos and our activity. They know what we're up to. They know who's struggling. They know who's having trouble. They know who's doing well. They know who they can kind of rely on and say they got it, they're good to go. Same within Davenport. Me and another officer worked the two northern beats of the city, and we always kind of took it as a kind of a little bit offensive if our supervisors had to come up north and cross Kimberly Road, because we're like, we got it. Even if it's a gang fight or whatever, we handle it. So yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do, you get 3 minutes for closing statements. We'll start on this end this time with Alyssa.
Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak and to answer some of your questions tonight. Part of the job of the auditor in the auditor's office is to educate. So you don't know unless you ask, and there are no dumb questions. Call my office if you have any questions or concerns about the upcoming general election. As your Jackson County auditor, I believe that every election is important. We elect people to work in Washington, D.C., send people to Des Moines as state legislators and state officers, local county elected officials, school board members, mayors, and city council members for the passage of bond referendums. These are the people who make critical decisions which will affect your property taxes, your income taxes, and the laws which we abide by. I would also like to assure everyone that the auditor's office is ready for the challenge ahead of us this election. Comfort and choice is the theme of this election due to the COVID pandemic. You choose if you want to vote in the comfort of your home, coming to the auditor's office to cast your ballot, calling our office to curbside vote, or to go to your polling precinct on Election Day. Monday, October 5th, is the start of voting in Iowa. Voting in the auditor's office or voting curbside in the comfort of your vehicle. If you have requested your ballot by mail, you have several choices on how to return it. Either place it in the mailbox because postage is already paid for. A new Iowa law was passed with every envelope being returned through the U.S. Post Office has an intelligent barcode sprayed on it so it can be tracked through the postal system. You may also choose to bring your voted ballot back to the auditor's office from 8:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. or call us to request curbside pickup on the east side of the courthouse. But if you are like my husband and myself, you will see us casting our vote on Election Day. All 16 precincts will be open at 7 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. with capable election officials to assist you. Remember that Iowa is a voter identification state, and you will need to show it when you vote in our office or at the polls on Election Day. I've been in the trenches of county government with experience working in 3 different offices for the last 40 years. I enjoy the challenges every day with a get-her-done attitude, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd as your Jackson County Auditor. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, 3 minutes.
Once again, I'd like to thank Farm Bureau, Ohnward Fine Arts Center for hosting the forum and everyone in attendance for coming. I want to thank Brent Kilbert for putting in the time and effort needed to make this a formidable campaign. I'd like to thank my wife Carol and my family for their help and for putting up with the long days and longer nights while I campaigned. I want to thank my committee and supporters for everything they have done for me. I could not have done this without them. Being second in command has allowed me to shape the direction of the Sheriff's Office, including upgrades to new standards in technology and policies and procedures. This also provided me with the budgetary experience needed to maintain fiscal responsibility, which allows for the operation of an effective and efficient Sheriff's Office. With the jail project moving forward next year, and the never-ending challenges we continually face, we need someone with the experience and leadership that I possess. Experienced in the operation of the detention center, both the civil and criminal aspects of the office, and I'm a certified jailer through the state of Iowa. My colleagues know me the best. My fellow deputies in the Sheriff's Office, current Dubuque County Sheriff Joe Kennedy, retired Dubuque County Sheriff and United States Marshal Ken Rundy, they know my character, they know my work ethic, and they are endorsing me. They're endorsing me because of my integrity, experience, ability to be a leader, loyalty to the citizens of Jackson County, my ability to network with neighboring and other law enforcement agencies, and my common sense. These traits have been a tradition within our office for years. I have always respected each individual as a person and have strived to provide all Jackson County residents with the best service possible. As your sheriff, I will continue to put people before politics. Experience, leadership, and common sense have been a tradition within our office for years. I can assure you that these traditions will continue with a vote for Steve Schrader for sheriff on November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, Brent.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised here in Jackson County also, and I run our family farm. I would be honored to return home and serve you and our great community as your next Jackson County Sheriff. I have over 27 years experience in law enforcement. I've worked at every level, from small towns to big towns like Davenport, for a state agency. I'm currently with the Scott County Sheriff's Office. I've worked across state lines with other state agencies and also federal agencies on investigations. I've also had a highly decorated 32-year career in the military. I was promoted to Master Sergeant in my first 19 years of enlisted service, and then commissioned and continued as an officer for the next 13 years. I've recently retired as a captain. Essentially, my entire law enforcement and military career has been in the service of others. My experience, I feel, is more diversified from working with a wider variety of cultures and organizations. I've been hand-selected for difficult, high-profile, and even newly created assignments. I've been praised for possessing the diplomatic skills and integrity to build trust and collaboration, and most importantly, for the amount of care I take in looking after others and building cohesive teams. I've excelled in leadership at every assignment, even under high-stress environments such as combat deployments and critical incidents on the streets of Davenport, such as shootings, riots, etc. And I've had the opportunity to see what works and what doesn't in a variety of scenarios. I'm asking you for the chance to show our community a more effective sheriff's office. Through numerous conversations throughout the county, some common themes have emerged. Essentially, it's time we get back to the basics of community service and law enforcement. We need to respond to the scene of incidents, write reports, collect evidence and investigate, and be proactive against serious crime and deter them in the future. My goals, again, are to provide professional leadership through honesty, integrity, accountability, and transparency, restore trust, confidence, and respect in the sheriff's office through competence, increase proactive patrolling against serious crimes like drugs and thefts throughout the county, protect the community by networking with them to help deter crime, protect taxpayers by implementing the safest, most cost-effective, and efficient jail solution, and network with other law enforcement agencies to multiply the results of our efforts. At the end of the day, I want to do a better job representing everyone. I want to gain the respect of our community, gain the respect of the sheriff's team, and gain the respect of neighboring law enforcement agencies. Lastly, I'd like to give thanks again to the Farm Bureau for organizing this event, the Ohnward Fine Arts Center for hosting us, the audience, my opponent Steve Schrader for attending, my wife, my family, and my volunteers who have done an awesome job for me this year. It's been a tough battle. I'm sure Steve would tell you the same. And please vote for Brent Kilberg on or before November 3rd.
Okay, Sandy.
I'd just like to say thank you again for your time. This is going to be a short closing. I'm new at this, and I wasn't really prepared for a closing speech. But I would also like to say, as a young girl, growing up at Crystal Lake Cave, I spent a lot of time with my dad on the road, doing grading and listening to him of all the problems we had. And I'm well prepared to check out the roads and give them my what should I say, comments too. I feel this has really been a journey for me, and I've met a lot of great people out on the trail, and I think Jackson County is a beautiful, beautiful county. I think it has a lot to offer, and I believe we can do more to beautify it and also to bring more tourism in is what I'm concerned about, keeping the small businesses alive. And I believe, actually, that I do have qualifications to be your Jackson County Supervisor, and I hope you give me the chance. I'm ready to jump in and give it my all. Thank you again.
Okay, Mike. Thank you. And thank you all for participating and coming here and listening. I don't see many heads bobbing yet, so we may have kept you up and kept your interest anyway. I would like to highlight some of the accomplishments that we have done, and I'm going to stress the word we because it takes a lot of teamwork, and it's a team effort. It really is a team effort, and we've stressed that for the last couple of years. One of the very important parts of supervising, or one of your responsibilities, is of course the budget. I want to throw this out there. For the last 3 years, we reduced our expenses for the last 3 years running. My full year budget was approximately 1.2%. The second year was 5.8%. We have not had our state budget back yet for the last fiscal year, which we will receive soon. It projected to be another almost 6%. To put that into perspective, that's about a $1.5 million reduction in expenses. Now again, there's many contributing factors that go into a budget. Including your great support staff in our auditor's office, and Lisa does have a great staff. It's also all department heads, whether it be secondary roads, law enforcement, whoever it may be, working together for the best interest of the taxpayers. We have worked very hard to keep the expenses to a minimum. Another policy we put in place was it's called a small city swap funding, and it's for smaller communities of under 5,000. They can apply. There's a form to fill out. They have to qualify, and it's an 80-20 split for expenses for projects that they cannot afford, and a lot of these small communities cannot. And it's been very beneficial to these small communities talk to your mayors, talk to your council people, and ask them what they've done with it, whether it be an ADH corner sidewalk or whatever it may be. It maximizes their dollars. We've also put in place a pay structure scale for law enforcement based on years of service and experience, which was a good policy. I think it was time to put it in place. Years of service and experience means a lot to me. We put in place an education reimbursement policy. So as we hire somebody new, we sent many people to classes and to get educated on their new job. We educate them, they go somewhere else to a different county, find a better job, higher pay. So we now have a policy in place that they reimburse us back X amount of that education for how many years of service. We have a new hiring policy that runs through our HR department, so it's controlled and completely confidential. We have a new return to work policy. There's always a broom to be pushed. So you may be off or light duty, but we have a new policy. We implemented a new cell phone policy here the last 6 months, which is saving us thousands of dollars. And we actually put a new procurement policy in place, and that was done for when we had the floods one season. And now we are capable of receiving FEMA funds. So he's telling me I gotta quit, but there's a couple other things that we've done. If you want to talk to me about them, I would sure appreciate it. Any questions that you may have, I would surely thank you for your tremendous support in the 2016 election and during my first term in office. I've always strived to make informed, logical decisions for the good of all of Jackson County citizens, using both my personal values and common sense. I will ask for your confidence and support in the upcoming November 3rd election. I would like to remind all eligible voters to participate in the election. Voting is a privilege and allows your voice to be heard. I thank you and thank you for your continued and past support and your continued support. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank all the county candidates for being here, and let's give them a nice round of applause. We're going to take a short break and switch our candidates. Okay, tonight we have, for the Iowa State Representative District 58, Andy McKean and Steve Bradley. And for the United States Senator, as an independent, is Suzanne Herzog. And we're going to start with some questions for the state representative. Oh, sorry, yep. Okay, we'll do that. We'll start with Steve, opening remarks. Get 3 minutes.
Testing. Good evening. I want to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Scott Shekel and the Jackson County Farm Bureau for hosting this event. My name is Dr. Stephen Bradley, and I'm married to Candy. We've been married for 24 years. We have 2 kids and 5 grandkids. I've been a small business owner and a dentist for 35 years. As a private practice owner, I understand the importance of managing finances and wanting my tax dollars spent responsibly. Iowa thrives under Republican leadership. Our fiscally conservative policies keep our economy growing. Liberal policies mean more spending, more taxes, more regulation, and more government involvement in our businesses and lives. I was raised with common sense, conservative Iowa values. I grew up working hard, from having a paper route, baling hay, construction work. I understand the value of hard work. I'm no novice to politics. I served as president of the Iowa Dental Association and was chair of the Iowa Dental Board. I was appointed by both governors Chet Culver and Terry Branstad. As chairman, it was my duty to oversee dentists and the health and safety of citizens of Iowa while squashing bills that were not. This past year, one of my bills I introduced in 2018 was passed and signed by the governor. My beliefs are a strong agricultural economy. When Iowa's entire economy prospers is when the farmers are successful. I believe in the Second Amendment, quality education, less government control, and lower taxes. I am pro-life, and I support our police force. Thank you.
Okay, Andy?
In these challenging times, it's important to have steady, thoughtful leadership working for solutions to the serious problems facing Iowa. I believe that I've been a trusted friend in trying times and have done my best to work constructively for the people I represent. My legislative priorities continue to be rural revitalization, quality education, affordable, accessible health care, mental health reform, support for conservation, preparing our youth for the jobs of tomorrow, and fiscal responsibility. I'm proud to represent a rural district and have worked hard for legislation to promote telemedicine, equalize transportation funding for rural school districts, give rural Iowa its fair share of economic development funds, boost rural mental health, and offer more affordable health insurance options for farmers and self-employed Iowans. I was pleased to be appointed to Governor Reynolds' Rural Empowerment Board, where I can continue my efforts on behalf of rural Iowa. Helping the people and communities I represent get things done is the part of the job I enjoy the most. Whether it's helping Wyoming get a telepharmacy, supporting Bellevue's application for Great Places designation, helping small businesses get through the pandemic, or working with folks to cut through bureaucratic red tape, I make it my business to be there to lend a helping hand. I believe that I bring skills and experience to the job. In the addition to my legislative experience, where I served as Senate President Pro Tem and chaired various legislative committees, I practiced law in Jones County for 35 years, taught graduate courses at the University of Iowa, and called square dances all over eastern Iowa. Connie and I live on a 35-acre acreage on the edge of Anamosa, where we raised our 4 children and now enjoy the pleasures of being grandparents. With our children out on their own and my legal career behind me, I have the time to put my full energies into my legislative duties. Whether you serve as a Republican or a Democrat, you must never forget that you represent all the people. Anyone who has followed my career knows that I am very independent and put the interests of my district ahead of partisan considerations. No party has a monopoly on wisdom, and I keep that in mind as I consider legislation. When it comes between party leaders, be they Republican or Democrat, and what's best for my district, you can bet my district always comes first. I'm deeply concerned by the divisiveness in today's society and believe that we can disagree without being disagreeable. I've prided myself in running positive campaigns and regret that my opponent has chosen to launch negative attack ads. At this point in my life, I have no future political aspirations. My only goal is to do the best job for you that I know how. I hope that you'll find me deserving of your support to continue my work for you as your state representative. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me here today. Thank you for the Jackson County Farm Bureau for doing that. And thank you to all the candidates. You know, this is one of the best ways to learn about what's going on in a county and learn who my Iowa neighbors are. I want to congratulate all the candidates for stepping forward. You know, there's no better Iowa neighbors than the ones who are engaged and involved in their community. So it takes a lot to do that, and I love seeing that. I'd also like to thank my partner, Jim Copeland. He's here, partner of almost 10 years. Today is the anniversary, the first year anniversary of his mother's death. She was a delightful woman and one of 13 kids from a farm just north of Grinnell. And so I just wanted to acknowledge Jim, who's been very supportive in this endeavor as I'm running for U.S. Senate. So I am Suzanne Herzog. I'm Iowa's no-party candidate for U.S. Senate. There isn't anything less Washington insider than a no-party candidate. If you research how political parties work in Washington, you'll know that what George Washington said in his farewell address is true, that they can prevent the branches of government from enacting the powers provided them by our Constitution. And so I have nothing against political parties when they work, but this is an emergency, and this was a great opportunity this year. There's a huge enthusiasm for independent candidates in our state and nationwide. Often more than a third of the state's people are registered independent. So it was important that we give you an opportunity to be represented. You know, the best senator would be the person who's most engaged and most responsive to you and doesn't let any political party agenda get in the way and doesn't impose personal views on you. I'm supposed to be representing you. The Herzog family name comes from some of the original homesteaders in our state, German immigrant farmers. My grandfather left the farm in 1930 and went to Marquette University in Wisconsin. And he was a farm kid who wanted to be a doctor and sold encyclopedias to get his way through college. And his first day when he was trying to register, the registration process was very confusing. So he was about to leave and give up when he walked into the dean's office because the door was open. And he said to the dean, "If my dad ran our farm like you're running this college, we would have lost the farm long ago." And so the dean helped him out immediately and he got registered. He went on to be a successful surgeon in Milwaukee for a long time. He ended up opening a proctology clinic, so that's probably where this career story should end. So I went on to work in healthcare too. I've been an emergency department nurse. I had been for almost 20 years. I was born and raised in Cedar Rapids, where my parents had the 7 of us kids in less than 10 years, and in addition to that, they took on foster children. So sometimes there was 10 kids in our house and it was chaos. I never noticed a rural-urban divide in Cedar Rapids where I grew up. I was always on the neighbors' farms. I tasseled corn to earn my way to Costa Rica to be an exchange student. So we're running out of time, but that's just a really basic. So maybe I'll just quickly go through my resume. I studied economics at Iowa State with plenty of farm and business ag students. We need a lot of government oversight in federal agencies to advance that. And, you know, Farm Bureau has been on the right track. If we would have listened to Farm Bureau and stayed in the Trans-Pacific Partnership and negotiated that trade policy, we would have been in a lot better shape now, because that would have given the leverage against China that we need. That would have given us the strongest provisions for intellectual property rights of any trade agreement that's ever been had. So we need to objectively look at our mistakes and move forward, and we need to do that in a nonpartisan way and get things moving in government.
Okay, we're gonna do some questions first with Andy and Steve, and then we'll do some with Suzanne. So I'll go with Andy first. Explain your thoughts on what area of the state budget needs to be reduced.
We're going to be facing a very challenging budget situation when we return to Des Moines next year. Due to the pandemic, we've seen a significant reduction in revenues in the state of Iowa, and we are going to have a very difficult task in determining the setting of a new budget. Our first job is to be willing to set priorities and do what is necessary to get done. But I think we're going to have to be willing to make some difficult choices and find areas where we can cut out unnecessary spending so that we will have the adequate funds to take care of the priorities and the important needs that will have to be met. Needless to say, our first priority is, and in our first most significant part of our budget, is for education, and we have to make sure that we can support quality education for our students. Needless to say, we have significant infrastructure responsibilities that we have to be willing to tackle. So again, it's going to be a very difficult budget year. I think we'll have to be making certain reductions, and we'll be having to set priorities in that process.
Okay, Steve, explain your thoughts on what area of the state budget needs to be reduced.
Well, 55% of our state budget is in education. I am not in favor of reducing any education fund. We do the best job of educating our students in the state of Iowa. We are always 1, 2, and 3 in the ACT scores. We educate our students very well. What I'd like to do is keep our students that go to our state schools and try to keep them here in the state. It is, like Andy said, it's going to be rough next year. We're going to have less money to deal with, and we're going to have to cut some programs, but I am not in favor of cutting education.
Okay, we'll go on to our next question. Steve, you'll go first this time. Small rural counties like Jackson County need road and bridge money, but money seems to go to larger counties. What can you do to see that we get the needed funds to update our infrastructures?
Could you repeat that again?
Small rural counties like Jackson County need road and bridge money, but money seems to go to larger counties. What can you do to see that we get the needed funds to update our infrastructures?
Our voice has to be heard in the state, okay? And I think we have to, the louder the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I think we have to be really loud on what we need here, especially rural roads and bridges. And, you know, as you talked to before, I know next year we're going to be dealing with our budget cuts, but we still have to put forward, and maybe some of this has to be put off for a year or a couple of years, but that's what I would propose then too. So, but I would go, you put the fires out first, do the worst roads and bridges first, and then work our way up.
Okay, Andy?
Rural revitalization has always been my #1 priority. And rural Iowa has for too long not gotten the attention it deserves. One of my priorities in the legislature is to turn that situation around. And I'm very glad to say that we've been making some success in that area. In my first term, I worked very hard as a member of the Economic Development Appropriations Committee to start requiring that a fair proportion of rural economic development funds go to our rural areas. And we were able to get that through, and it's making a big difference. And we're certainly going to be fighting for rural Iowa when it comes to transportation funding to make certain that rural Iowa gets its fair share. Because as you well know, in Jackson County, we have significant concerns here with our bridges and our roads, and we need to have the adequate support from the state to help tackle those very important problems.
Okay, next question, I'll start with Andy. How would you support tourism in your district?
I think I'm on. Tourism is a wonderful form of economic development in that there are really no deficits to it. It just helps enhance the qualities that make an area unique and beautiful. And Jackson County is particularly blessed, and the motto, "Simply Beautiful," certainly applies to Jackson County. I believe as we consider economic development in the future, we need to get away from the old tradition of chasing smokestacks, but be working for the quality of life issues that bring and keep, especially young people, to rural Iowa. And among those quality of life issues are quality education, good recreational opportunities, and good tourism. Recreation in particular is something that will bring more and more people to rural Iowa and to Jackson County. And Jackson County has been a leader in their tourism efforts. In fact, your conservation department has a statewide reputation for what you've been able to accomplish. So again, I'm very supportive of enhancing tourism. I think it's a tremendous route for economic development, for attracting people to the county, and encouraging what's best in this area.
Okay, Steve, how would you support tourism in your district?
We are very blessed in District 58, Jackson, Jones, and Butte County. We have the Mississippi River. We have all these streams running through, and we need to support our river cities. We need to support, like Maquoketa has beautiful, beautiful buildings, and we could support, coming for tourism there. I do a lot of kayaking in the area, and we have so many people that will canoe and kayak in our rivers and our streams. It is unbelievable. We also have ample hunting areas in the area and ample parks to camp and to go fly fishing and do everything, all those outdoor activities. So I think we should support those areas, and our conservation group helps us do that too. Appreciate that.
Okay, we'll start with Steve on this one. What vision do you have for the 5-cent deposit on bottles and cans in Iowa? What vision do you have for the 5-cent deposit on cans and bottles in Iowa?
Well, it's worked pretty good so far. I mean, it's kept our side roads and streams. Well, I can't say streams because I kayak a lot and I see a lot of bottles and cans in the streams. But it's really kept our roadsides and kept people picking those up. And I myself, when I'm kayaking and canoeing, we always pick everything up. So I think we should keep the 5 cents. I don't think we should increase it. And I just think it's working well.
Okay, Andy, what vision do you have for 5-cent deposit in Iowa?
The bottle bill has been one of the most successful programs that we've initiated in the state of Iowa. It has done tremendous things. It's cleaned up our ditches. It's relieved our landfills of waste. And it's also provided employment, often for people who have disabilities. Unfortunately, the bottle bill has not been modernized in 42 years. Believe it or not, the redemption centers are still only receiving 1 cent per bottle. They have not seen an increase for 42 years, and they are dropping like flies all over the state of Iowa. You talk to Mary Ann Rinner right here in Maquoketa at Kansas City, and she'll tell you how tough it's been for that area. So the result has been we've been losing these redemption centers, and the bottle bill is beginning to be at risk. We need to return to Des Moines. We need to get serious about keeping the bottle bill. We need to increase the redemption rate from 1 cent to 2 cents so our redemption centers will flourish. And what you'll see, if you can make them profitable, you'll see them popping up all over rural Iowa. It'll be great for rural economic development. It'll clean up make our communities even cleaner, and will allow the bottle bill to continue on into the future. It's a very good piece of legislation, and we need to be serious about keeping it and making it work.
Okay, we'll start with Andy on this one. What is your position on the legalization of marijuana, either medicinally or recreationally? Other states have legalized marijuana and received tax money as a result.
In addition to receiving tax money, they receive lots of problems too. I'm very, very strongly opposed to the legalization of marijuana. I think it would be a terrible mistake. I think it could be the gateway to other drugs. However, when it comes to medicinal marijuana, I think a well-regulated program with medical professionals involved to help people with serious chronic illnesses, it is something that I think is worth pursuing. Again, with the proviso that it be done properly and carefully. And I know I've heard from many, many people around the state who have serious medical conditions, chronic pain, and they have found that medicinal marijuana has been extremely helpful in relieving some of their discomfort. And I certainly want to be able to help participate in that effort. Again, two different issues here. Medicinal marijuana, yes, it certainly has potential and possibilities. Legalizing it for recreational purposes, absolutely not.
Steve, you need me to repeat the question?
No. Got that loud and clear. I am right with Andy. No to recreational marijuana. Yes to medicinal marijuana. I have a brother who is hooked on painkillers, and the only thing that works for him is medicinal marijuana. And I think we should support this, and I think it would benefit all of Iowa. We have to regulate it. I have seen too many other cities, Colorado and California, where they legalize it. I'm not in favor of, I'm afraid of what's going to happen because they legalized it in Illinois, and it's just right on our borders then too. So, but I think we should say no to recreational marijuana and yes to medicinal marijuana.
Okay, one more question for Steve and Andy. Steve, you go first. Can you define what pro-life means to you?
Well, real life.
No, pro-life.
Oh, pro-life.
Yes.
Pro-life, okay, that's totally different. Yes, I am pro-life. Life begins at conception, and I believe that's how we should vote, and I'm not for abortion in any circumstances, except for when a mother's life is at stake.
Okay, Andy?
This is a very complex question, and they are very well-meaning people on both sides of this issue. In my legislative career, I have had a strong pro-life voting record. In fact, I was the only Democrat in June who voted for the 24-hour waiting period because I felt it was very important that there be time to seriously consider before making such a fundamental decision. However, I was also one of 6 Republicans who voted against the so-called heartbeat bill, which would have prohibited most abortions after only 6 weeks. I voted against that particular bill because it was blatantly unconstitutional. I knew it would go nowhere, and indeed I was right. In addition, it was very poorly drafted, and also I think it failed to consider in a compassionate way some unusual circumstances that can occur particularly early in abortions, early in pregnancy. I think what we should be concentrating on is what we can all agree on, and I think we all agree that we want to treasure life and to reduce the number of abortions. How do we best do that? The best way to reduce abortions is to reduce unintentioned and unwanted pregnancies. So I strongly support efforts at greater birth control and greater women's health. I think, unfortunately, in recent years, the legislature has reduced appropriations for women's health, and we've seen for the first time an increase in the number of abortions after years of decline. So I think there's a lot we can do together to reduce abortions in our state. But I will say this, although I favor a number of restrictions on abortions, I would oppose efforts to outlaw all abortion, because that's been tried before, it was not successful, and it was a time of back alley abortions and all the tragedies that were incumbent to it. So again, I hope that everyone can come together on this, instead of it being such a divisive issue, that we can all agree that we want to reduce the number of abortions and find ways to get serious about doing it responsibly.
Okay, I got some questions for Suzanne. Would you support the repeal of Obamacare?
Thank you for that question. You know, I worked in healthcare for over 20 years before I became an economist. And I became an economist so that I could realize the healthcare reform that's long overdue in this country. And so the problem with Obamacare is half of it was fantastic. You have all sorts of, I can tell you as a health economist, because after I became an economist, I started looking at healthcare networks, nonprofits all over the country. And I know how payment systems and everything else works. After I took care of people in emergency departments for almost 20 years and plenty of farmers, and I tell you, farmers try to repair themselves before even getting to the emergency department. So there's that, but there's also very serious farm accidents. But with my healthcare reform, what we have to do first is completely disassociate all access to all private health insurance from employment. Until you do that, you will not be able to contain costs in this country. You will not be able to give everybody fair access to quality private health insurance policies that are affordable. The problem with the Affordable Care Act is that it clung to this broken U.S. healthcare system. We're the only developed nation that only gave you access to healthcare through your employer. You don't get your car or your homeowner's insurance that way, and it makes no sense. So if Republicans tell you healthcare is a free market system in this country, they're wrong. It's a convoluted, complex payment system nobody understands. As a health economist, I can tell you for the Republicans just to make hospitals declare and insurance companies to declare how much things cost, that's not going to help anything with this broken, complex system. If you want to support rural healthcare providers better, you'll do what I'm saying, because then they'll have many more different payers and better revenue as well. Now, I don't want to, you know, I have very limited time here, so I hope you'll check my website and that. But the important things to remember about Obamacare is you are safer when you go to the hospital. You're less likely to be readmitted to the hospital. You're less likely to have money wasted for unnecessary procedures because of that. So there's some very important consumer protections, and you're not excluded for pre-existing conditions. So consumer protections need to be kept. A lot of the rest needs to be scrapped, because right now your taxpayer dollars are subsidizing monopoly-priced private health insurance. 75% of Medicaid in this country is completely privately administered, and 30% of Medicare is. So we have this big mess and mixture of private and public funding. So if you want to make private health insurance work better for everybody, where it's more affordable for everybody, and if you think you have good health insurance through your employer, I can guarantee you you don't. You would have better private health insurance if we all were in the same pool, everybody in your state, or a minimum rating area of 1 million people, like similar to other insurance.
Okay, Suzanne.
Sorry, it was hard to keep that. I'm sorry. It was hard to keep that short because this is most of my life's work.
What is your stance on allowing Donald Trump to appoint a new judge to the Supreme Court?
Well, that's an excellent question. You know, the thing that concerns me most is just the impartiality of the Supreme Court. And, you know, the two-party system has become so divisive that if you're only representing, especially in the state of Iowa, if you're only representing the people in your political party, you're definitely not representing the majority of Iowans. Well, what's happened is things have become so divisive that, you know, the Supreme Court was supposed to be a completely impartial body. We're not supposed to be choosing judges according to how we think they're going to, you know, settle cases. So anything that we've done to make the Supreme Court less impartial is a bad thing. So throughout history, when, you know, Merrick Garland, his confirmation hearing was obstructed in Congress, that was the wrong thing. And so what do we do now about that? I think that, you know, I'm a nonpartisan person. It seems like the most fair thing to do would be for, you know, Republicans with the precedent that they set, to just bring the country together. You know, whether or not you have the constitutional authority to do this, I'm sure they do. It's questionable if what they did was the right thing before. You know, any decision we make today should be, how can we bring the country together? What's the least divisive thing that we can possibly do? Now, we can try to rush confirmation through, and somebody will, depending on who that confirmation is, It may or may not divide the country even more. Now, if President Trump had nominated Merrick Garland as soon as he had his first opportunity and said, I don't want to only represent my base and the extremists from any one party, I want to bring the country together. Imagine where we would have been today. So whatever we can do to promote the impartiality of the Supreme Court is the right thing to do. Hopefully he'll come up with a nominee that everybody can live with, and we'll move on.
Okay, Suzanne, one more question just for you. Do you support the constitutional carry bill?
Oh, for a gun?
Yes.
Oh, so and explain that to me. What constitutional carry bill? What regarding?
So you can openly carry?
Oh, in the state of Iowa.
Yes.
I think that has to be the jurisdiction of the states. You know, this is not a federal level thing. I wouldn't be making those kind of decisions. You know, I was an emergency department nurse for 20 years, and I took care of tons of gunshot wounds. And I can tell you that there's so many different ways that those kind of things can happen. There is no single piece of legislation that would have prevented them all. So I am for responsible gun ownership, and I'm for making sure that we have economic incentives for good gun training and safety and those kind of things. Now, when we're talking about things like whether it's how to handle COVID-19, or when you were talking about abortion issues, or any of these things, we have to weigh individual rights with public health and safety and our responsibility to the people around us. And, you know, that's what we're going to do with gun legislation. Now, if there's a responsible way, if different states want to do that, I have no problem with that. On the federal level, we shouldn't be making those kind of decisions for states.
Okay, I got one more question. It's for all three, and I'll start with Steve. When it comes to ag-related bills, who would you turn to for information and facts on how these bills would affect farmers?
Well, of course, the Farm Bureau. I mean, isn't that who you guys are the expert, and then I'd also ask my constituents, all my patients who I talk to every single day, and I see 40 patients a day, and that's all we talk about. It's mostly farming. And so they would be the ones who I would ask and see, and then the Farm Bureau too. So that's who we need to ask. You ask the experts.
Okay, Andy?
The first people I would ask are the farmers. Then I'd go to the Farm Bureau. Then I would also ask people who are in farm industry as well. Agribusiness is an important part of the overall farm economy. I've been very, very concerned with the plight that farmers are facing this year. They've had low prices to begin with, and on top of that, the pandemic and the derecho. It's caused all kinds of serious problems. Again, we have many personal friends who are farmers, so we get to hear firsthand some of the experiences and concerns they have. And I might add that I was very, very proud and honored to be endorsed by the Iowa Farm Bureau.
Okay, Suzanne?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was thinking about responding, trying to finish off with the previous question. So the exact question was?
When it comes to ag-related bills, who would you turn to for information and facts on how these bills would affect farmers?
Well, I appreciate, yeah, definitely farmers first. You know, I did my economics program at Iowa State with plenty of business and farm, agribusiness and farm students. And, you know, when I started my campaign a little more than a year ago, I made sure that I visited farms throughout the state, and I did a lot of observation and learning about different kinds of agriculture practices through a group called Practical Farmers of Iowa. So that too. Now, my family was a member of Farm Bureau when my kid's dad worked for Farm Bureau Financial Services for about 7 years. And during that time, we were looking into agriculture things as well. What I said earlier about listening to Farm Bureau is because they're looking at markets the way an economist like me is looking at markets. Some of the market consolidation issues where we have to break up monopolies and have less barriers to market entry for smaller processors or smaller producers and that. These are the kind of things that Farm Bureau is addressing, and these are the kind of things I understand and can help them address as an economist. Those are some of the same problems that are happening in healthcare. So, you know, you definitely want to listen to organizations that are getting feedback. You know, any community groups throughout Iowa that people are participating in throughout Iowa. Look at the membership of Iowans in Farm Bureau and in Practical Farmers and in all our farm cooperatives throughout the state. You know, we have to get input from all those stakeholders. And, you know, I will be the most responsive and engaged senator in Iowa's history. And, you know, you get more than $3 million a year to manage your senatorial office. So the people who are going to be standing in line, if I ever open a door to them at all, are the big lobby groups. So we're going to, you know, especially the corporate lobby groups. Now there's some lobby groups that are very important on behalf of, you know, groups that benefit Iowans the most.
Okay, we're gonna start closing comments, and we'll start down here with Suzanne.
Okay.
Got 3 minutes.
Okay, well, very good. Well, you know, it's not a lot of time to be able to address all the big issues that we have to be addressing at this time. I would say that as far as any of these individual rights things that we're talking about, I think there's a middle ground on every single important issue between these political parties. You know, I think I am the most experienced person to address a lot of these issues. You know, at this time in our country, we need somebody who's going to help realize the healthcare reform that's going to help save our economy and give people access, you know, affordable access to the services they need. Something that doesn't create a big government bureaucracy that's inefficient. For the first time with my healthcare reform, U.S. healthcare consumers will finally have input to change how the market works for you. That will leave more public funding left over to keep people from falling through the cracks. So we can make Medicaid a better safety net for anyone of any income level to prevent medical bankruptcy. And we can do that by having an income-based buy-in for any year you would need it. So instead of having to go bankrupt or having subsistence level income to be on Medicaid, you could buy in. Now that won't be your best option. Your best option will be to get some of the more affordable private health insurance that's available to you. But at least we can keep people from going medically bankrupt. And we don't have to affect anybody who already qualifies for Medicare or Medicaid. So that's important to know. And I think there is a middle ground on abortion rights issues, whether we realize it or not. I took care of people in life and death situations for 2 decades. And I represented people in their best interest. We have to give everybody the resources they need to make the best life and death decisions for themselves and their families. And it's a matter of jurisdiction. For individual rights, I'm not going to take your gun so you can't defend your house. If you're a man, should I be taking one of your kidneys and a lobe of your liver to sustain the life of somebody else? Do I have the right to do that? No, that's a matter of self-jurisdiction. Women have a right to self-jurisdiction. You decide whether or not you're going to sustain the development of another human being within you with each and every breath and each and every heartbeat. And until that human being can be sustained apart from you, for all legal and ethical reasons, it's an extension of you. Now, with technology, earlier and earlier, we will be able to sustain somebody at an earlier gestational stage in pregnancy. But who should make those life and death decisions? It shouldn't be your government. It should be, those life and death decisions should be made by your healthcare providers and your family that's closest to you. And what this gentleman is saying is right. Abortion rates were at all-time historic lows in 2015 when Planned Parenthood was the most thriving and well-supported ever. So if you want abortion rates to be at the lowest points in history, you want abortions to be happening as early in gestation as possible, and you want teen pregnancies to be low, then you want to make sure that people have the resources to make the best life decisions for themselves and their family. We don't tell you when to take your grandmother off a ventilator, and we shouldn't tell you when, we shouldn't make the decisions for your children at any developmental age. Did you know that abortions after 21 weeks are very, very rare? and it's less than 1.3%. And I worked in healthcare for 30 years. There isn't disregard for human life. You know, medical records are legal documentation, and I can guarantee you we ensure that we are respectful to life from the first day of gestation, but your government cannot be taking self-jurisdiction away from women. We have ethical and moral authority over our bodies, and we absolutely cannot have your government making life and death decisions for you.
Okay, Andy?
Before I begin, just a word to Ms. Herzog. After suffering through all the negative Joni Ernst and Teresa Greenfield ads, you are a breath of fresh air. There's a little country cemetery near Scotch Grove in Jones County where 5 generations of my family lay at rest. My great-great-grandfather, James McKean, was a Presbyterian minister who came to Scotch Grove in 1854 to preach at 2 country churches. My great-grandfather, John McKean, was a district court judge who represented Jones County in the House and Senate. They never became rich, but they served their community and state with honor. I think my commitment to public service is rooted in my family's legacy. My opponent's mailings describe me, and I quote, as a career politician who has been running for one office or another for 40 years. Steve, maybe you might wish to add that I earned my living practicing law in Jones County for 35 years, teaching graduate courses, running our bed and breakfast, and calling square dances, not to mention helping my wife raise 4 wonderful children. They've been busy years, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. I'm glad to say that here in Iowa, we have a part-time citizens legislature where our legislators represent their neighbors for several months each year and go home to their full-time jobs, whether it be a farmer, teacher, or nurse. I consider my work in the legislature as public service and not as a career, and consider it my opportunity to give back to the community and state that I love. It has provided me with an opportunity to hopefully make Iowa a better place for my children and yours. I am deeply concerned by the divisiveness that is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. The excessive partisanship that we see in Washington is slowly but surely trickling down to our state government, and even more sadly to our personal relationships. We are losing the one-for-all, all-for-one attitude that made our state great. We are allowing philosophical differences to stand in the way of personal relationships and prevent us from finding common ground on the challenges we face. I consider myself a moderate and will continue to work to find that common ground and reach common sense solutions to the challenges we face. In my years in the Iowa legislature, I have served with Republicans controlling both the House and Senate, Democrats controlling both the House and Senate, and split control where Democrats control one House and Republicans the other. Quite frankly, the best legislation I've seen is passed when we've had split control. Why? Because with split control, since bills have to pass both chambers in identical form, Democrats and Republicans were forced to work together to achieve common ground. When either party runs the show, resulting legislation tends to be extreme. And while extreme legislation may satisfy the party base, it is often not in the best interests of the state as a whole. I'm afraid we've seen that in the past 4 years with legislation that gutted collective bargaining, privatized Medicaid, politicized the selection of judges, and stripped away local control. I am hopeful that we will return to split control after the upcoming election and return to a spirit of compromise, common ground, and incremental progress. I want to thank you all for the confidence you've shown in me over the years. I have tried my best to be deserving of it, and if re-elected, I will continue to serve you to the very best of my ability. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Again, I would like to thank Scott and the Jackson County Farm Bureau for hosting this event. I would also like to thank my wife Candy for standing beside me throughout this whole campaign. She has been my rock. In closing, I'm a lifelong Iowan. Iowa is extremely important to me and to maintain the quality of life we enjoy in our state. Every day, I problem solve for people of all walks of life. I bring a unique perspective to the Iowa House, being in healthcare for 35 years. I grew up always working, from paper boys, working on farms, baling hay, cleaning out barns, construction work, working in an operating room. I know the value of hard work. I've been an advocate for many years for legislation, and now I'm ready to be on the other side. My grandpa always told me, if your word and handshake isn't any good, then your signature is worthless. I keep my word, and Iowans believe and trust in me. I am a true citizen politician. I ask for your vote on or before November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, we'll give all of our candidates a nice round of applause. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and this was taped, and it will be on the local access channel, so get out and vote in November. Thank you, everyone.